Okay, so as mentioned, I didn't create separate synthesis patches for clap, open hi-hat, and closed hi-hat. So I'm just gonna drag and drop these audio files as separate playlist objects. You just always have to remember that when you use these playlist objects, you have to make sure that at all times you have these audio files in the same exact folder that you have your main patch that you're working with. Right, so nothing new about this. We know that we have to create a message of 1 for all of these playlist objects. Make sure that you send the output of each of these gain sliders to both channels of your EasyDAC. Awesome, let's just test some of these things out. I'm just doing a very random sequence. No rhyme or reason in any of it, just to test everything out. Yeah, so you can mix your sounds, your individual sounds in relation to each other. If your kick drum is too quiet, raise the volume up on that. If your clap is too loud, lower the volume. See what you like. Okay, so you can see that all these messy patches that we had are now abstracted into just one single object, and I'll just have the main controls that I want in out of them. Now, the last section of this video, how do we include this synth rise? Well, we don't need to connect the synth rise to our sequencer. So let's see what we want to keep and what we don't want to include when we abstract the synth rise patch. If you don't remember, we had 2 separate oscillators. We have a saw oscillator and a cycle oscillator. And we have 2 separate metronome objects, so we can have separate control over each of these notes. And the other thing that we could change was the duration of each of our notes, which would affect the envelope that we had. Now, the envelope setting is something that I wouldn't necessarily bring out of this patch into my main patch. I would just kind of leave it there. You can at any time open up your abstraction and edit things out, so it's not that hard. But I will have the toggle and the metronome interval for each of my metronome systems out in my main patch, so that way I can activate or deactivate each of these synths whenever I want. I'm debating whether I want to bring the duration out into the main patch or not, but for now let's just leave it as it is. So I'm thinking I will have 4 inlets in total. Our first inlet will go into our toggle of the first metronome, and the other one will go into the number box that goes into the metronome, which dictates how fast or slow the metronome is. And let's just create 2 more inlets, and in the same order send it to our second metronome system. Now for outlet, again, we just want to come out of our last stage before our EasyDAC or gain control, which here is our filter. Create an outlet. Alright, let's close this and save it. See, now we have 4 inputs, and I want to label them. And I know that the first one is a toggle, and the third one is a toggle, and the ones in between are just the value for our metronome. Now there's one more thing that I needed, and that's the cutoff frequency of the filter, because if it's at 0, we won't hear anything. So I have 2 options. I can just set it to a number somewhere in between, or I can bring this into my main patch, and I think that's what I'm going to do. And notice that now it has number 3 in it, and this will mess everything up because I already had my patches connected to that object according to the 4 inlets that I had before. And this is the ordering number that Max gives to these inlets from left to right. So if I want this to be the 5th inlet and not the 3rd one, I need to bring it a little bit out further. Oh, there you see. Now it's the 5th, because if I scroll up, you can see I had 3 and 4 here. And Max just gives us numbers in order from left to right. So I want to make sure that this is my last inlet. So I'll move it far right. And let's save this, close it. And now we have a 5th inlet, which would also be an integer box, but this is our cutoff frequency. So let's try this one more time. I'm going to set it at 2000. There we go. Okay, so now let's check our saw oscillator. Right, so I just sequenced a rhythm. Now let's try some of these. Obviously you can make it more interesting. In the next section, I'm going to talk about how to utilize one of the tutorial patches about FM synthesis and bring that into our main patch as an abstraction.